Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram, and this is fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 339. Hopefully, you guys have had an amazing Friday. I know I have an amazing guest for you tonight. You guys have seen him all around the community, very much so in the organic community. Joshua Steensland, how you doing tonight, sir?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
Man, it's definitely my pleasure for sure. What you smoking on there tonight?
I think tonight I've got some of Genome Alchemy's gear. I got some tester beans from him a couple years ago. I think it was the Platinum Tesla OG times Teleforce. Fuck, sorry, brother, if I'm messing it up, but it was an unnamed tester. Really nice, man. It turned out really, really good. I only had like three or four in my last cycle of his in there, and they all turned out really, really nice. So working through some of that.
Well, it's got to be pretty decent for a tester if it's still around a couple years later. It's got to say a lot right there.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
So heck yeah. Well, this is the backstory show of it all. So I guess we
Yeah.
might as well just jump into it all and get to the beginning question. That I think it's funny about this in particular question does start off almost every show. But the beauty about this question is it has so many different outcomes. It's it makes the question valid every
I'm
time.
intrigued.
So
Yeah.
when was the first time Lady Cannabis come strolling into your life?
Well, it was around ever since I was a kid. My mom was a regular would regularly imbibe, and of course back then I was born in 75. I'm 46, so back when I was young, single digit years. Obviously cannabis is still very illegal, and my mom was very much um, pretty open with her lifestyle, and so it was around, and so I had a pretty early exposure to it. I even remember, gosh, I must have been 8 or 9, getting a hold of some brownies that my mom and her friend had made, and they had just kind of were like, oh, they laughed it off, and they watched me get completely baked and just laughed at me about it, and that was my first like real world interaction with cannabis. Unfortunately, my mom passed away shortly after that in a car accident when I was 10. And so I was removed from the culture then because I had to go live with my grandparents. They're very strict, and so I didn't. And then in high school I was an athlete, and so I was pretty big into fitness, and I was a varsity track athlete, and so I didn't really smoke a lot in high school. I had a girlfriend late in high school that we dabbled a little bit, but I was it just wasn't my wavelength back then. I joined the Marines in '93, and I got stationed. I was fortunate enough to get stationed in Puerto Rico for one of my first duty stations after going through training. And so um, after about 7 or 8 months of just drinking myself silly in Puerto Rico, I was finally like, man, there's got to be another way to recreate. And I just got the itch to smoke some weed. I was like, here I am in the Caribbean, and I knew that there was a lot of recreational substances at my fingertips, and so we took advantage of our position in Puerto Rico, me and a couple of my good Marine buddies, and we were able to find a regular source for cannabis, and that really kicked me off, and that was probably in like '95. And so that's when I knew that cannabis was going to be with me forever. You know, I just after like binge drinking for 6 months, you know, and then get moving on to the cannabis and just like, oh, okay, man, I'm not going to be puking anymore. You know, all the stuff that most of us figure out when we, you know, when we weigh our two options when it's a recreational thing, you know. And then after time, you start to realize, as most of us do, that there is actually like a therapeutic benefits happening with this. And this is before medical, right? So it wasn't even, nobody ever even really thought of weed as medicine back then. You know, we just knew that there was a net positive. And so, you know, it was one of those things where as soon as I consumed it regularly in Puerto Rico as an adult, I was like, oh my God, this is staying on board forever. Like, this is a non-negotiable.
It is. Well, sorry to hear about the early loss of your mom, brother. That's very early.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things that it shapes you as a person. You know, it's that a part of your past that you can't escape from, and it shaped who I was from that moment on. But at this point, it was so long ago. You know, it's just part of life, you know, and you know, it's the way it goes, man. I appreciate it.
Man, but between the, you know, you like you said, it's a tough way to, you know, shape your life, man. But between that and the Marines at 90 in 93, that had to have been fresh out of high school. I mean, graduate directly into the Marines. You're not even fucking around.
Totally.
You're like, I'm going into the fucking Marines. I'm going to be a badass. That's not, I mean, out of all the branches, you know, the Marines don't fuck around. You definitely chose the hardest branch.
Well, there's kind of a funny story with that, because because my mom passed, I was in I lived with my grandma for a spell, and then we went to like a foster home type situation where it was a small town in southeastern Washington, so everybody kind of knew each other. It wasn't so small that it was like, you know, 100 people, but it was small enough that the community of people knew each other. So we went to live with this family, and oh man, I think I lost my train of thought already. Oh, but I wanted out. Yeah, so I wanted out, right? So at the end of my junior year, I enlisted in the Marines to leave the following year. So my whole senior year, I knew I was going into the Marines. And it was just like, I was just preparing for it my whole senior year. And then 2 days after graduation, I was gone. Jumped right into it.
It's crazy. So I can't help but wonder, you say your whole senior year, you knew you were going in and you kind of trained for it. Yeah. So was that like physically training for it, or I'm going to the fucking Marines and I'm going to be a madman my senior year?
Yeah. So no, it was a lot of like, I was kind of a boring cat, you know, by the time my senior year rolled around, because I was pretty, up to that point, I was pretty serious about sports. And then I had kind of a long time steady girlfriend. And so I was really just focused on spending a lot of time with her, because I knew I was going to be jamming, spending time with family. And then I did do a lot of like mental preparation. Like I read a lot of the Marine Corps manual, that kind of crap, just to kind of get prepared for boot camp. So I originally, how I decided on the Marines is really kind of funny. I had scheduled an appointment with the Air Force recruiter, and because I was like, oh, let's check out the Air Force, see what's up. I thought maybe there was good job opportunities after the service with the Air Force, you know, like either in mechanics or something. So I was like, let me check them out. And I went to the recruiting office and they completely stood me up. Like nobody was there. I was fucking pissed. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And so I walk off, and I walk down and I walk by this open door. And as I pass the open door, there's a guy in there and he's like, "Hey, the fuck you doing?" And I come back and I look and it's the Marine recruiter. And I was like, "Hey, these fucking assholes stood me up." And he's like, "Yeah, it's about right." And then that was it. We started talking and then I was like, all right. I think you saved me from making a bad decision. I took their little ASVAB test and, tested in like the 97th percentile. And he just was over the moon to get me signed up. And I was able to, pick a pretty good MOS, military occupational specialty. And so, I was able to specialize in as a Marine security forces. So, I got to learn finer security points, VIP escort, executive protection, high asset security, that kind of stuff. And I ended up getting a secret clearance, and that's how I got sent to Puerto Rico to work on a secret a Navy base that had secret clearance for communications or whatever. So none of this stuff. I mean, I'm totally cleared to talk about any of that. It's pretty much common knowledge at this point what's going on down there. But it was really good for me because I was a bit, I was not ready to go to college. And, I just felt like that was going to get me out of the situation I was in at home, where I just, that was my ticket to be out and independent as soon as possible. And it seems kind of counterintuitive to go into the military to be independent, but that, compared to the situation I was in, that was independent, and I gobbled it up, and the Marines was really, really good for me. But I did 4 years and was anxious to get out and live a normal life for sure.
So when you were finding the cannabis over there, what were you getting into? What were you
Holy
lucky enough
shit.
to find?
So it, a lot of it was pretty much trashy, boat smuggled stuff, like you would find coming from Mexico or anywhere else. It was a little more green there. But how we had to get it was really a trip. Like, there's this place in Old San Juan where you'd go and there'd be these like cops that were paid, and they're sitting there at the top of this stairwell. And when I first got taken there by a local, they were like, "Hey, don't worry, these guys work for the cartel." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I see what's going on." So there was like, no problem. They know what's going on. You won't get arrested when you come back up. Everything's cool. And I was like, all right, great. So we go down this little rickety like stairwell into this old San Juan, where it's just literally like the first settlements. It's really, architecturally speaking, it's gorgeous, man. But down there, you get down into these like seedy, narrow, reminds me of Venice, like really like narrow Venetian type streets. And people would just come out of the woodworks with tackle boxes, these 3-tiered tackle boxes. And inside this tackle box was whatever you could possibly want, like the powders, the pills, the ganja, like everything, like anything you can imagine. So as you can imagine, 21-year-old young man in Puerto Rico with lots of spare time, because we were pretty fortunate where we worked for like 3 days straight, and then we got 2 or 3 days off. So we had a lot of spare time, because when we worked, we were working 24 hours straight. We were on site. We couldn't leave. We were eating, sleeping on site. So we got a lot of free time when we weren't working. So we got to just tear it up in Puerto Rico, and tear it up we did.
It sounds like some pretty good times over there, man.
Yeah, man. Yep, for sure.
Definitely, especially being wound up. I mean, the adrenaline, I'm sure, from doing what you're doing is pretty high anyway. So in your off time, I'm sure you're matching, you're matching The adrenaline rush.
Oh yeah. The intensity never leaves when you're in that kind of, especially that young too, and the testosterone is flowing, and you're really just kind of at maximum machismo. I wouldn't have wanted to run into the 21 or 22-year-old me back then. Different character.
Yeah, same here. I heard you mention that, like, the therapeutical or the medical benefits of cannabis. It sounds like you found it. Did you find the actual medical benefits before growing? Did you actually find that it had its benefits before the growing?
No, actually, when I first started growing was obviously like for profit. It was I think if anybody was so inclined to do a deep scroll on my Instagram feed, you'll find an old Polaroid from around, gosh, it must have been 97, from my first grow in 97, back when Polaroids were like the only way you could take a picture of your shit, because you couldn't take it to a 1 hour photo. There was no digital cameras. So it was a Polaroid, and so 97 was my first big grow, what I call big, not a closet, and I've been growing ever since. But no, that grow was specifically to save money and make money, because we obviously buying weed at $50 an eighth or whatever back in the day is not very sustainable unless you're a trust fund kid or whatever. So we started growing. Yeah. And then I just noticed, over time that, like, my stomach issues that, that I was having pretty regularly, when the quality of the cannabis got better, like when we first had the homegrown, that was, exponentially better than the crap we were getting on the street. And then once we, started refining our skills and the smoke got better and better, that's when my body got tuned to it, and I realized that, hey man, my morning nausea is non-existent when I have good smoke. When I've got the good homegrown stuff, I didn't have the nausea, or it helps with my anxiety. I did end up leaving the service with a little PTSD, from sticky situations in West Africa, but it's helped, and I felt that blanket of ease, that comfort that I get from it, and recognized it as therapy right away, like within a couple years of growing it.
I've said a lot of times in the last year, mainly from my own experience, but hearing people tell their own journey as well. But cannabis, as you cultivate it, does seem to bring out the medicinal side. I think it's very therapeutic all in itself.
Yeah.
But today I was listening to a book on organics, and just as much as I thought, cannabis in general has been suppressed, but I kind of thought this one fact that I heard today had to be, even though it seems to be more than obvious, I had never heard of it, up until I heard it today. And it said that in 73, the Horticulture Society actually sent out did a campaign they had realized it then. Horticulture had such a therapeutical value that they were reaching out to drug addicts and, people that had stress problems back then.
Right.
Way the fuck back in 73. Right.
And that's just the simple act of cultivation, right? Like cultivating anything, right? Like having therapeutic benefit. Yeah. It's a trip.
Yeah, and and then it once applied, I thought, it just, I almost just thought it applied to cannabis, but to know that they knew it applied to everything back then, I was like, man, why isn't this being taught to more people? You know what I mean? How isn't,
Yep.
when addicts go into, recovery, or, how come one of the things they ain't offered right off the bat?
Yeah.
Here's some dirt, here's some soil,
100%.
fucking take your mind to another place.
Yep,
You know what I
100%.
mean?
Yeah, man. We were just talking about that here at home the other day about how your gut is responsible for a lot of your mental well-being, right? And so in Eastern practices or medicines, like especially Ayurveda, they call the gut your second brain, and that it's directly responsible to the parts of your brain that allow you to feel pleasure and a sense of well-being and all of that. And so what I'm getting at is that if you're gardening in an organic garden where you don't have pesticides, where the microbiome is present in the soil, that's the similar biology and the same biology that it's existing in your guts, right? So that's why, like, pulling a carrot out of the garden and not washing it off with that chlorinated water, tap water, before you eat it is really important, because you're introducing the microbes that actually populate the lining of your gut and charge your second brain and literally help you feel better. So the fact that they have empirical data to kind of back that up is awesome, and something that we've all just known from experience, the catharsis and this kind of release that happens when you actually spend time in the garden, not fiddle fucking around, but cultivating. Like, there's something that happens, and we all know it. And I think the more people that get their hands in soil or care for a crop, whatever, even if it's hydroponic or something, like you're missing a living soil component there. But I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, you're still taking care of something and guiding it and steering it, and you could do it in a way where the end product is good and healthy, and that's legit, man. So I don't hate on people for doing that, but the soil growing, there's something there, with that exchange of biology, that's super, super important. And it lends credence to what you were just saying about, it actually makes you healthier, makes you happier. And there's science and physiology and biology that kind of back all that up.
For sure. I actually, it's funny because, you always hear that phrase, the gut feeling. Got
Yeah,
that gut feeling.
100%.
And, I never had actually related it to my gut or the second brain up
Yep.
until this last year. I kind of did a deep spiritual dive this last year.
Nice.
And it was kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was with a little bit of the micro dosing, so maybe it was the smartness of the
Yeah, man.
microbiology right there,
Yeah.
being introduced. But it was a little bit of both, I think, as I went
Mm.
down that road and started doing this and talking about a little bit more about organics and stuff, that I really started putting things together. And I
Right.
read this one book, what was it, Dirt to Soil, or was it the Soil Cure, I think. And they were talking about the importance of your gut biome, and it being responsible for up to 40% of your overall thinking in general.
Right.
Talking about how smart microbes were, actually at one point, putting a drop on a puzzle, and it actually would figure its way out, grow its way out of the
Right.
of the and it was like, wow. But I never really put any thought to, your gut having that much to do with your overall thinking. But It obviously does.
Yeah, it is, and it's a tough one for us to wrap our kind of Western minds around, because we're so in our head, and it's disassociated with our body a lot of times with our thinking, and it was an eye opener for me. And even now, like I understand the concept, but it's still really hard to even like wrap your head around. Like, what does that even mean? Like your gut is responsible for this shit. And to me, it means you just gotta be cool with what you're eating, man, and make sure what you're eating isn't disturbing that microbiome. And if it's damaged anyway, you've got to replace it. And the only way to replace it is, by populating it. The best way is by populating it naturally with foods that are just rich in those. That's on the leaves of the lettuce, and that you can't escape good biology if it's coming from a biodynamic farm or a regeneratively ran farm where the place is just teeming with it. You'll get it just walking around. You're just going to pick it up.
Yeah, I don't think people like to realize that, so much more. They like to think that weird, just this. It's
Yeah.
This is a person.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's it. You know what I mean? They don't like to realize that there's so much other living processes going on inside of us that are so independent of what we think and do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. True story. So it's interesting that you're doing the microdosing too. I've started on that journey probably 2 months ago now, and I've been taking a point 0.1 to a 0.15 pretty much every day. I've taken a couple days off, just to kind of see how if there was a difference cognitively or what. I've really been trying to be present and basically keeping like a mental journal of what the different dosages are. And I've got two different strains of mushroom too. So it's interesting, like dosing those separately, to see the differences, that are subtle, but they're there. And so I'm interested. I'm interested to expand my medicine cabinet, as it were, to try multiple different varieties and really kind of just play around with them at the micro scale. Like a lot of these, I haven't even taken a therapeutic dose yet on these, or I haven't gone on a journey on these yet. But I do know that if I've taken it up to 0.2 or a 0.25, that I'll start to feel that yawns coming on, and you start to feel that first onset. So I know that there's a threshold, but I've yet to take a heroic or a journey with them. So I'm kind of enjoying it, leaving it at this micro perspective, because I've definitely noticed a difference in my overall sense of well-being, and more energy, more like natural energy. It's been really interesting. I don't know. I'd love to hear what your experience has been.
Very similar. Very similar. Overall, better mood.
Mhm.
For me, they kind of. I went the other way. I I I had a friend of mine that had passed me a good amount of them, and I was, you know, here and there a little bit, and I could tell that they were helping rebring back that good mood that I used to have all the time. I'd be
Right.
like, okay, okay, and then it ended up. It was kind of funny because the guy who was actually, I have one of my daughters in chat, so this is kind of funny. My oldest daughter, uh, who her boyfriend, who was kind of cultivating him at the time, was passing them to me, which I think was super funny because it was kind of like a let's keep the old man happy. So like every time I see him, he was like, you know, handed me a nice batch, and they were going back and forth from fresh to like a dry,
Mm.
and so I was like, going back on the weight back and forth, just barely taking some, and then it was like wet, 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 wet. Then I got a bunch of dry, and I didn't even think that during that transition period. So I took a wet dose of dry.
Yeah, so you
You
got
see what I'm
walloped.
saying
Yeah,
here?
oh yeah.
Yeah. And it ended up being a fucking dose.
Yeah, man.
And it was weird. It was completely weird. I What happened that night, it was very hard to swallow, to be honest with you.
Oh
It
wow.
was super hard to swallow.
Yeah.
But what came about was, man, it was everything that was going on in my life at that time that I wasn't aware of,
Yeah.
that was like revealed to me all in that night.
Yeah.
And it was super hard to deal with.
Yeah.
And then as time went on and I kind of reflected on my experience on that night, things started to unfold. It was weird. I started
Interesting.
seeing like angel numbers, 111, 222. And
Oh,
at first it
interesting.
was like, wow, that's weird. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then it became so apparent that I couldn't look away anymore at the
All right.
angel numbers. I
All
had to
right.
start looking into what the heck I was seeing. On top of that, things were happening that were relating back to that night, and it was like they should have been just crushing
Right.
events. You know what I
Right.
mean? But it was like, I've already dealt with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
I've already been there. I've already dealt with that. I'm over the situation.
Right.
It's time to move on. I'm
Right.
moving on. And even the people around me were like, how are you fucking holding, how are you keeping shit together?
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
was all to that revelation. I had already
Super.
seen and been through it that night.
Wow.
And as it played out, I was able to mentally deal with it all. It was
That's
very
pretty.
wild.
That's a powerful testimony. Like it's one of those things like the psychedelic experience. Like some people try to take them to have a profound experience and then they just miss it, and other people have these profound experiences completely inadvertently, and many times they're these uncomfortable, kind of jarring moments, but like like the stream, clearing the river or a blockage in the river, there has to be enough inertia to jam that big rock out of the way to let everything go, right? And so I think that a lot of times that's what happens when people have bad trips, or you end up getting into this introspective kind of hellish space where you're just like spinning on your thoughts. That's it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. So you can be combative or you can go with it, but either way I feel like the outcome is the same in the end, whether you go about it kicking and screaming, or you go about it peacefully and calm, which a lot of times you don't have the choice. It's just your body is going through a reaction, and your mind, and you just kind of gotta deal the cards you dealt yourself, and because I've been there, man. I've dabbled with psychedelics a lot back in the day, and I've had found myself stuck in, like, especially with LSD, man. You can, because the journey's so long comparatively to psilocybin, that you really, like, you can find yourself, if you're not in the right setting or space, and if certain life circumstances or whatever, you can find yourself kind of in a feedback loop of anxiety, but a lot of that has had to do with setting, at least in my case.
I was listening on Clubhouse the other day in a room about psychedelics, and they were talking. They were actually saying that for therapeutical uh, sessions, that you should almost be in that bad spot
Mm,
when you go into that place, just so you can skip the bullshit. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Interesting. That's interesting.
I've came to my session and I'm good today. You know what I
Right.
mean? And we're gonna, it's all good stuff that session. Yeah, you had a breakthrough, you left. But they were talking about, it was better to when you were, had that moment and you could go deep and lock into yourself, just like you were saying, push that fucking boulder out of the
Yeah.
way and get
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
move on
Yep.
from the sessions after that to the happy
100%.
place.
Right, because then
And I was like,
you've got this kind of this flowing energy if you're into that kind of thought process of how um, we interact with things energetically. This kind of electric universe type concept. It it stands to reason that when you are blockage free, or you've worked loose some kind of energetic blockage, that now you're open to receive the other signals, right? So you're not only are you more efficient with your output, but you're also more efficient at what you can receive as well. It's like a two-way diaphragm. You remove the blockage instead of just a one-way. That's super interesting.
so even after that experience, it kind of just led me to being more open
Mm,
to, more spirituality
sure.
side of things.
Yeah.
And I then from that point on, I've been trying to just kind of link the two,
Mm,
much like you know, you, we think about we're in a spiritual place or meditation like state when we use cannabis. I've been trying to use microdosing when I want to dive deeper into my spirituality. When I'm like
100%.
go want to. A lot of times, I think a good time is like right before I like listen to a book on Buddhism or
Mhm.
something like that, to where I'll be listening to something and then I'll hit that one thing that sends me into a tailspin.
Yeah,
Then I'll stop
yeah.
and focus on whatever it is I just heard,
Right.
and it's
Yeah,
been a
it's pretty
very
cool how
good
it
tool.
gives you laser focus. Like that's what I noticed, that and not like this enhanced caffeine or methamphetamine type focus. It's like a very present and aware, but you're able to like just focus on shit. It's really hard to describe. It's a really soft uh awareness, soft focus is how I describe it, because it's not like you're stuck with this kind of hard analytical, because like once again, LSD can feel that way. And from what I understand, that's what like a lot of the Silicon Valley like coders and whatnot, they're microdosing the LSD, and I could really see where that has that really kind of sharp focus, with it, as compared to mushrooms. It's more kind of, when you get high with mushrooms, it's more of this drunken feeling where you're just a little kind of woozy and whoop, whoop, but with LSD, you're like locked in, things are moving and you're just like, whoa, whoa, it's very crisp. And so I could see the differences, and I haven't microdosed with LSD yet, but I think it would be interesting to juxtaposition the two, especially after two good solid months of microdosing with the mushrooms, man. And I really like it, and I don't foresee myself stopping anytime soon.
So I was just fixing to kind of walk you down this road to a question that I was leading up to. And then I had this weird kind of thought in my head, and I think it's kind of funny. So I'm going to skip the bullshit and I'm going to go right to the thought I had.
Do it.
And I think I'm starting to think, as of this moment, that spirituality could be a dealer. Now, hear me out when I say this. Hear me out when I say this, because this is what I was going to lead you up to. Because this is what I think's going on. We've leaded up to this point where humanity as a whole has kind of been a shithead, and I think this is what's going on. This is why I say spirituality could be somewhat of a dealer, because I think we're being led up to something here.
Mm.
I think I think it's no coincidence that cannabis has been brought to the forefront and to capture our own all of our attention. But it's like it seemed like it's worked like this. Spiritualities went, hey, asshole, come here, try this. You need
Yeah,
this.
gotcha. Yeah, totally.
And then we've taken the cannabis plant. Now follow me here. Follow me. We've taken the cannabis plant. We've started to smoke it and use it. But yeah, this is helping. This is helping. And then she went, you should grow this shit. And we went, wow, this is really good. This is very beneficial. And then she went, okay, here's organics. And we went, wow, we're getting in deep, man. I'm really putting myself into check. I've learned, much about myself, and now, with organics, I'm learning how to take care of myself and the environment. And then she went, hey, one more thing. Here's some mushrooms. And then fucking and now we're like, wow, now we're unlocking our mind and spirituality. So I think she's just like standing there, just kind of like feeding us these little
what else you want?
too.
I got ayahuasca, I got DMT. What you need? What you need?
Yeah, we're gonna finally unlock the doors for you.
Yeah. Huxley is smiling right now. That's hilarious.
I'm thinking it's very possible.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea.
So once you got out there and you're back home, did it start with organics for you?
No. The guy who taught us was very, miracle growy. This is so he was very much just whatever you can get. Get the 20-20-20. And so it was that kind of deal. And then once I did a couple cycles, because what happened was that my friend and I leased this really beautiful place out in the country. We had a big, beautiful basement, and an acquaintance of ours was like, hey man, let's make use of that basement. I was like, okay, let's do it. He's like, I'll show you what's up. I have all the equipment. I'll bring it over. I'll teach you guys how to do it, or teach you what I know. And then you guys run it and we'll split it off 1/3 a piece. Right. And I was like, fucking hey, I'm down. So props to Gordon, man. Old Gordon, I don't even know what's up with that guy, but he's the guy that turned me on to the trade. 1997, and so from there I just kind of poured myself into, of course these were kind of pre-internet days. 97, at least where I was, I didn't have internet in my house. I think my brother might have had some weird dial up at his place at that point, but I was completely out of that loop. So we were literally in the ordering books out of High Times days, to get information, so the Mel Frank shit and the early Ed Rosenthal stuff, that made growing cannabis seem so hyper complicated. And those early how to grow cannabis books were really fucking discouraging for a lot of folks, because they were chocked full of how easy it was to fuck it up. And and this was back when the standards were, shit. And the genetic availability was shit. So, it was really, back then, it was just if you didn't learn from your own mistakes, you would never make it in cannabis world back then. You know, like you absolutely had to be a real-time farmer, you know, where like you had to pay attention. We didn't have forums. I didn't have Instagram or any of these other fucking things that we take for granted now to bounce ideas off and get immediate answers from. And even now, it's become such a thing that you've got to be careful what answers you fucking get now. You get so many fucking answers back to your questions. So, you know, there is something to be said for really like having to dig around and find good information back in the day on what proper cultivation techniques were, and then just going out and doing them, man. And so my trajectory in doing that brought me to all different kinds. I think aquaponics is the only thing I haven't tried. You know, as far as conventional cultivation systems, deep water culture, aeroponics, the recirculating deep water culture, like current culture, these highly oxygenated versions. I've done those, done soil with synthetics, which is completely fucking asinine to think about. You know, it's like, what was I, you know, it's like literally like tossing soil, like completely like mind-numbingly dumb shit. But I've done it all, right? And eventually I got to the point where I was looking for a simpler way. You know, I was like, there just has to be a simpler way than mixing these 7-part formulas, fucking toting fucking soil out and wasting all this money. It just did not make any sense, you know? And so, you know, not until like 5 years ago. So from 1997 to fucking 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was running the rat race of trying to grow with the latest hype fucking nutrients or the latest hype techniques, you know. And once the internet became a thing, of course, that opened up the ICMAG forums, and that was a huge resource for me at that time. And that's kind of what pushed me into doing the current culture setup for a while. But once I learned about the living soil systems and the ease of operation, you know, it was music to my ears, and it was literally just like, why didn't I find this sooner? You know, it's like in the first cycle that I grew in living soil with the living soil style system, it was hands down better than anything I had grown in the, you know, 15 years or whatever it was previous to that. It was ridiculous and unmistakably obvious that the product was better, that the methodology was better. And even if I didn't understand it at the time, and not to say that I have a deep understanding of it now, I just have a few more years experience on the person I was then. So I'm definitely not a Dr. Elaine or anything. So I'm not even close. But what I have accumulated is experience, and over the years of all the fucking up, I've learned, you know, to really pay attention to the things that are happening. And that's why that Fukuoka's book, The One Straw Revolution, really spoke to me, because it just made a lot of sense, like thoughtful observation, very conscious observation of what's going on, not just whimsically looking at shit. I mean, there's time for that. But but your time spent in the garden, there has to be a time of kind of just this conscious analysis where you're taking mental notes, and you know, you're literally like taking a scientific method and trying to understand what's happening and paying attention. Because if not, you're setting yourself up. And what I found is that it's usually in the makeup of the individual. So they either have it in them to kind of tackle the grow like that, or they don't, and they had to learn a regimented system of cultivation that allows them to stay present like that. So his book, where he just explained how he just kind of opened himself up to observing and watching the natural order, emboldened my kind of desire to step back and put the components together and then know when to just get the fuck out of the way. And that's when my garden started to really improve, is when I started to understand when I needed to be out of the way and when I needed to be there. And that's tends to be the variable at what fucks people's garden up. You know, if you have to fuss around your garden for 8 hours a day, something's wrong, homie. I walk in my garden for 10 or 15 minutes in the morning. I do a little, canopy management and a whole lot of analysis and admiration. And then I just kind of bask in the vibe of the room and bounce. Sometimes I'll sit out there and smoke a joint and just kind of look at the plants, especially when they're looking great. It never gets old.
They are a beautiful plant, that's for sure, and they seem to just have that great vibe about them. So the garden is an amazing place to spend some time.
Sure is.
So you said it was night and day. Night and day, you could tell that first time.
Without question. Yeah. When I switched from, so there was kind of a two-tiered transition. I was doing like a cocoa-based medium, running, your standard, your pH perfect advanced nutrients stuff. And I ran that for a good year or so with really great success. It set some medical gardens up for folks with really good success, really high yields. But of course, looking back, the terpenes were definitely not as good as what we're producing now, but we were doing all right. But what had happened is we had got what I felt was a bad batch of that advanced nutrients, and just a disclaimer, it's just my personal experience. In my personal opinion, that we got a bad batch, and it ended up I ended up turning a whole room of mine, right, like mid-flower. And so I was really upset. And because I ended up double checking the pH of the finished deal, and it was like super low, like 5.2. And when I called them and explained what was going on, they were like, "Oh, it should still be fine." And I was just like, "Okay." That's when I knew I had to find a different way. That was too big of a variable. Up to that point, consistency had been pretty good, considering all things considered. That I'm such a stickler for consistency that even that one time in a 12 to 18 month period was enough to chase me off of the product. And then I really started looking at an easier way. And I think through the ICMAG forums, I saw super soil or something. There was some kind of post where somebody was saying, "You never pH your water again," or something of that nature, and I was like, "What? This, I don't know. This doesn't make sense to me." And I started diving into Sub's super soil mix, right? and then I was like, "Well, shit, let me give it a shot," And so I cooked up a batch of Sub super soil. I did the whole cooking process. Loaded them up into 10-gallon pots, and then ended up putting those pots on top of the old current culture system. So once again, if somebody did a really deep scroll on my Instagram, you could probably see some of my first pictures or old pictures of that very first system that I did with the super soil. So anyway, I ran that super soil run, and I even believe that's on my YouTube channel as some of my first videos. And in there, I had a VPD issue. It was before I understood vapor pressure deficit. And my room was running really dry. So the plants were very squat and stunted. So they grew really unusually small and bushy. So they looked really crazy. And I get a lot of comments like at 6 weeks of flower, they looked just huge and chunky, but they were just weird mutants. But the takeaway was, I didn't pH my water the whole time. Of course, my water coming in was carbon filtered city water. So I knew that it was in an appropriate range. I wasn't like watering in crazy alkaline well water or something and it working, you know. So when I say I didn't have to pH my water, I didn't have to pH a nutrient formula that I was feeding to my plants. And I knew that I was getting neutral water, basically neutral from my tap. So not having to worry about that was a big factor in me moving forward, you know, and to be able to complete a full harvest, a full run without pHing and just using fresh water, just using water only, I was sold. And the thing is that midway through that cycle, I stumbled across the living soil thread. And where it was I mean, I wish I could remember the person who posted it, but it was just a picture of this big, beautiful, just absolutely lush green plant. I was envious of how gorgeous this plant looked. You know, just when I first looked at the picture, I was like, oh my God, that's fucking beautiful, man. And the caption or whatever for the picture was like, this plant was fed nothing but straight water and its own fan leaves for the whole grow cycle. And it was like 3 weeks away from harvest. It was fucking beautiful. And I was like, this is impossible. Like I didn't even understand. I didn't understand how that was, you know, that person could achieve results that I had never seen in, you know, many years of cultivating. You know, his plant was so fucking radiant. I was completely fucking determined to figure out how he achieved that. And so that picture sent me down the rabbit hole, and I immediately went deep into the rabbit hole. I think Build a Soil at the time, they were I don't know how long they had their website up with a shit ton of information from Coots, and about the Coots mix and living soil and then the biology and the whole work. So huge credit to Jeremy and Build a Soil, because they allowed me to really kind of like just start to digest the important bits of the process, and it allowed me to make informed decisions. And I scrapped all of that super soil, because then I realized there was a lot of redundant, excessive nutrition in there that, you know, and I'm not shitting on the super soil recipe, but when it comes to living soil, you know, there's key differences. And so I bought the Keep It Simple soil from Tad, because I'm up here in Washington State, and I've just been rocking that ever since, man. And it's every cycle, and I'm on my 11th cycle now. I took a year off, so I would have had, you know, I'd probably be more around 15 or something. But I took a year off here at home to focus on the outdoor hemp project that I was doing. But now I'm just, you know, about midway into my 11th cycle, and still learning, still loving it, and now really achieving every cycle. It's like I'm loving what I'm seeing more and more. This cycle, the plants are just fucking, you know, I don't want to hex myself, but they're booming out there. They're looking beautiful, and it's super enjoyable to be in a space that's just thriving and not in a need for anything, and you can really feel it. It's a cool thing.
So I can't help but wonder, in that timeout period, when you came back, was the run after the timeout kind of like, hell yeah, and then did it kind of like ramp down? So basically, I'm wondering, did it sit why, you know, got great, why that it was taking a break, everything did its cooking, doing its thing? And
you're bringing up a really good point, and I'll explain what happened. Had I kept the beds active for that year, you know, what I mean by that is, if I would have just left a cover crop in there and kept the lights going and kept the blue mats going, and maintained the microbiome in there, then I would have been able to plug in cycle 10 and it would have been booming, right? No problem. But I didn't do that. I wasn't home at all for large chunks of time while I was working on the farm and when I was dealing with the harvest and all that. So I made the decision to literally shut the room down. I turned off all the lights, turned off all the climate control, shut the water off to the beds, and let the beds go completely fallow. So what I had to do when I knew I was going to kickstart the beds again is about a month before I was anticipating putting the cycle 10 plants in, I kicked up the room again. I got the climate control going. I got the lights on. I got the water going to the beds. And for a week or 10 days, I would go in and hand water with the hose, little doses to the bed, because it was at that point it had gotten hydrophobic. It was so dry. And so I really had to, I had to slowly water the bed so it would reach field capacity kind of in this natural fashion where I wasn't flushing things out. So once I got the beds to field capacity after about 10 days, then I did some compost extracts where, basically just put compost or leaf litter into a 220 micron bag and just kind of dunked it in and out of some water, and separated it just like water hash, separated those microbes into a solution, and then watered that into the beds to reintroduce a microbial population, and then planted new cover crop and companion plants. And so I let that process take place for 3 weeks or so. And I think it took me a little longer to get the plants. So I was actually able to establish a really healthy cover crop. But that being said, the biology numbers weren't exactly where I wanted, and we were getting into winter, so I didn't have a source. Like my leaf litter source outside was not really accessible anymore, so I was just kind of riding with what I had. And so my 10th cycle, it was, I didn't get it was fine. It just, I noticed that the growth rate wasn't as fast and vigorous as it usually is. It took a while for the veg to kind of kick in, and like the transplant shock, not shock, but the transplant stress was more pronounced than usual. Whereas like this time in the 11th cycle, because the beds were up and kicking, lots of biology happening now. I've been putting my spent grain spawn in the bed, so there's lots of fungal activity. And so now I didn't have any transplant stress. Like I planted the new cuttings in the 11th cycle, and they just fucking took off. So 10th cycle, there was those little kind of growth hurdles. And, I think early on there was a little bit of aphid pressure. And once again, I think that was because of a lack of biology. So the plants weren't getting all of the nutrition that it needed. So I was getting low Brix numbers on my 10 cycle plants. And so now in 11 cycle, my Brix numbers are a little higher. There's absolutely no pest pressure this time. And so to me, it was just a real testament to the whole soil food web and healthy plants being able to resist pests, not necessarily eliminate the possibility of pests. Like, there are some claims out there, which I find interesting, but I do think that healthy plants with high Brix are going to fare better than a plant with low Brix, that it's maybe not as healthy. That's really just kind of common knowledge, I would think. So I did notice that my 10 cycle plants weren't optimal, but did great. The yields were great. The smoke is fantastic. It was just those little micro inefficiencies that I noticed, and I honestly expected and anticipated them because it was my first cycle after kind of rebooting the beds. Yeah, I feel like I've been blabbing.
No. I'm sitting here enjoying it, man.
Okay, cool.
You're a wealth. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I know myself and everybody else are just taking it all in.
All
And I've got
right.
questions. I got questions. I
Cool.
got questions.
Let's do it.
Hopefully that you don't mind. I know
No,
this is
no,
supposed
man.
to be more of a spotlight and not like a
No,
Q&A, but
no. I figured it was gonna be a Q&A, and so I'm cool with that. So hit me up.
so with the I hear you talking about, well, first of all, when I guess first things first, when you talk of a cycle, how long of a lifespan are we talking? Because
Hmm.
when I do things around here are a little different. You know,
Sure.
obviously I'm in a veg. I have a
Yep.
veg and a flower. I work
Yep.
my way through. So is
Yep.
your cycle from start to finish, veg through flower, is that a
Dude,
cycle, or would you speak of a flower, just a flower, a cycle?
great question, and I think that that's dependent on your particular circumstance in that room. So like my cycles at home include the veg stage because I veg and then flower in the same 4x8 bed. Whereas like I believe, and if I'm wrong, I've got no problem being corrected, but I believe Steve with at Green Life Productions, their bloom room is strictly bloom, and they transplant fully vegged plants into their bloom room, and then they just go right into bloom. So his cycle, if I was calling his cycles, it would be just his bloom phase. That's what I would call. So, like when he says I'm at cycle 24, I don't think he's including the veg because that's happening in another room. So it's his bloom room is on its 24th cycle. That's my understanding of how I've interpreted his social media. I don't know his situation personally, so I'm not speaking in definitively. That's just kind of how I've perceived it. But myself at home, and that's how it'll happen for us at Ohio Fire Factory, this facility that we're working on. It's going to be the same way. A cycle is going to be a bloom cycle, so that's going to be 8 to 9 week cycle. At home, it's longer than that. It's the regular 8 to 9 week bloom, but it's also a 3 week to 4 week veg, depending on the growth rate of the veg and how many plants I got in there, whatever variables. But so my cycle is considerably longer here because I am including a veg.
Yeah, I think that's a key to know, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
because when I'm thinking about cycles, I'm thinking about time periods,
Mhm.
and in a time period on a bed like that, in the cycle, flower cycles obviously shorter,
Mhm.
more times in the time span, and I would think more brutal on the bed. You know what I mean? I would think the flower cycle would be, is speaking in cycles, would be more brutal, depleting the soil through those cycles versus, one cycle being half a light veg and then flower, depleting it a little heavier later on.
Yeah. I mean, that would be an interesting um, deep dive for some of these guys that are really into like doing the soil paste and the chemistry, the soil chemistry analysis and the plant sap analysis. We dabbled into some of that. We actually hired an agronomist, um, a professional agronomist who has managed 10,000 acres and has developed acreage from sagebrush land. Like, like the guy knows his shit. And so we were like, man, we'd love to bring you on, and help us manage like kind of our soil fertility and let us know where we're at from a chemistry standpoint. I was prepared to do what I needed to do to understand the biological side, but I didn't understand the chemistry side. And frankly, and it's going to sound terrible, but I'm really just disinterested in it. That like the organic chemistry side is just like I just like zone the fuck out. I've got no interest in it. And there's plenty of people that do and are great with it, and they can have it. I'm gonna focus, and I'm not saying there's no place for it, but I know what works for my brain and what doesn't, and so I know when to bring someone else on for those things, and so that was his role, and so he was doing really cool stuff like checking um, the nutrition, the chemistry levels in the soil, and then what was actually in the plant, and then juxtapositioning that data to see what was actually mobile in the plant from the ground. So there was a lot of cool data points that came from that whole process. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. It's a ramble.
So I just want to say it doesn't sound shitty in my view, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Okay,
It
good.
sounds, no, seriously, it sounds very masterful in my opinion. And then that may sound silly to you, but in
Yeah,
my
a
opinion,
little.
it's very masterful because to have a winning plan is knowing that you don't know
Oh, sure.
everything.
That, yeah, absolutely.
Secondly, to have I'm a big I like Napoleon Hill, uh, and he talks about having a mastermind circle, and part of having a mastermind circle is knowing that you don't fucking know everything
100%.
or you don't give a shit about everything,
Yep.
but that's part of the equation, and that's why I'm saying you're wise. You know it's part of the equation. You don't give a shit, but you got to have a guy on your team for that.
Yeah. Well, I've got to credit, there's a gentleman that was a member of our team for that big 2,900 acre hemp grow. His name is Eric. And he is a high level, like Fortune 500 CEO coach. And we got fortunate enough to have him on the team because he was the husband of our in-house counsel, right? Our in-house attorney. And so he kind of came as kind of a package deal. We brought him on too, because he would literally follow us around with spiral notebooks all day long while we're doing our business and just fucking taking notes on everything. And then we'd meet up and he would talk to us about, effective communication and understanding, team members' strengths and weaknesses and leveraging strengths. Like he really helped me look at things that I hated about myself. Like I'm the hypercritical nature. And then I've got this ability, and he calls it an ability to look around corners. But my other business partners would be like, oh, he's just being negative. When I'm not being negative. I have this like terrible part of my brain that tries to figure out everything that can go fucking wrong and what we can do, to fix those things were they to come up, and how likely is one to happen over the other. So, in my mind, before I met Eric, I hated that part about myself because I always felt negative. I always felt like I was seeking out the negative, and it really felt terrible. And then people who I worked with would kind of vibe on that too, until I met Eric, and he was like, dude, that's a beautiful fucking gift. Are you kidding me? Like, you need to groom that, man. And the people around you need to just accept it, because that's a gift that some people don't have, like the ability to literally and that's why people don't like it, because you have to put yourself in a losing position to figure out a way out of it before it happens. So what I'm getting at is that he spoke to that very same thing that you're talking about, and that I've carrying forward in everything that I'm doing, is that like understanding what your strength is first off, and then understanding your limits in that, and then hopefully you can curate a team where that kind of thinking is welcome, and like my team knows my weaknesses, and they don't dare put me in that situation unless it's for like, an exercise. It's like it's something that I want to do or we need to do as a team, that they know what my weaknesses are. Communicating, like cold calling, dealing with pesky, anybody of a pesky nature. I got really short fuse with, so they knew what situations to not insert me in, and then what were situations where I could leverage my strengths. And I knew that same thing of my teammates as well. And so that's the hardest part, is that any big operation, requires a team. You cannot have, unless you're some fucking Elon Musk, eccentric, crazy, super genius. And even then, you're going to be so eccentric that you're not going to be able to handle the personal skills that you need to keep a ship like that going. So you absolutely have to have a team, you know, for any kind of sizable project. And that's why a lot of big projects fail, you know, because you end up not having a team. You have kind of a dictatorship and this weird hierarchy. You know, the times that I've been around where we can actually develop a good, strong team are the where you have the most chances of success, for sure.
You know, you're absolutely right. And, you know, you can't even throw, you know, much respect to old Elon Musk is very genius dude and anybody in his boat. But even he isn't doing it by himself or
100%.
anybody to that. Because even if he were the only one doing a large scale like that,
Yep.
he'd be hindering himself
Yep.
in so many
Yep.
ways.
Yep.
There's, you know, he might as well be utilizing his talents in other ways and having people under him do smaller things so he could be doing greater things for the greater good. He'd be
Yeah.
hindering himself doing it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. 100%. That was another thing that Eric was saying about me is like, you know, it was like, hey, look, you know, you need to take time to sit there and stare at the wall and think and do, you know, and we want to give you that time. So nobody's ever going to, if you're sitting there, you know, we know that you're not sitting there doing nothing. We know that your brain is working overtime. So when we see that happening, we're going to give you that leeway and we'll find other people to do whatever needs to happen. So it is really kind of a cool, highly unusual situation. And we really lucked out having this kind of really high level. I can't say the names of the companies and people that he's worked with, but you would know every single one of them. And some of the personalities he's worked with are household names. And so it was very, very, very fortunate to be able to spend a good solid year to 12 months, I mean, 12 to 18 months with the guy. And I really picked up uh, uh, a lot of business savvy, a lot of personal communication skills, you know, and so I highly encourage people to think on that mindset if they're working on building anything of value and substantial, any kind of legacy project that you plan on passing on to your kids. Like it has to start with a solid foundation, and that foundation is your team. And you know, unless you think you could go it alone, but the deck stacked against you at that point.
So there's something else about putting together that team too that I've found. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe you could find some truth to this as well. When you're putting together the team, if you're the smartest guy on the fucking team, it's time for a new fucking team.
Yep.
You should be surrounding yourself with cats that are making you pull you forward, not
One.
necessarily you're the top dog and you put together some support.
Yeah, 100%. Well, then you find in like just your daily routine interactions with these people who like this Eric guy, man, like a genius, literal genius. Like he passed the bar and could have become a lawyer. His wife's a lawyer. They met in law school. And but he was like, fuck yeah, I don't want to be a lawyer. He's like, I'm just going to just do the CEO coaching thing. And so that's what he does because that's what his heart's at. And that's what he's really good at. He's good at organization and you know, so like I said, I can't speak enough good things about the guy and about the process, you know, the process that is developing anything substantial, any kind of business that's going to have longevity. You know, it has to start with that foundation.
It's awesome that you give credit to the people around you too, brother.
Oh yeah, it's the way it goes, man. I appreciate that. Totally.
So my next question is with my living organic bed would be how far ahead do I need to think? I'm hearing you talk 10, 11, possibly 15 cycles. How far ahead do I need to think when I'm putting my bed together? I'm asking this question because, in time, things, that bed's growing through time. You got cover crops you're putting
Right.
down. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's puffing up with
Yep.
time. You're
Yep.
building your own humus layer. Is there
Sure.
a time that it comes to where you go, I need to take this bed apart, cut it in half, bring it back down to, a level and let it rebuild? Is that a thing or no?
No, I mean, no, I think that if you, I don't know the exact rates of actual humus layer accumulation. So, um, it's like a quarter of an inch in hundreds of years or something. I mean, it's some kind of ridiculously slow process to build that humus layer. So, my understanding, like I've still got, um, let's go drop a hot joint just a sec. Um, my I've still got a good 3 or 4 inches on my fabric pots, and I don't think that I would get to the top in my lifetime. So,
So,
so you don't have to look too far ahead in the future. Like when I first started my bed, I didn't look past my first cycle, because I was just really interested in what was happening at that moment. I had these beautiful beds in the space, now, and it felt really right. And the plants really responded to the fact that they were in the beds. And at that point in time, I had learned better about vapor pressure deficit, based on that super soil grow that was really dry. And I was like, I was racking my brain on what was going on, why my plants were so stunted. And then I figured it out. And so that first cycle was just, I wasn't thinking about cycle 10. I think I knew of like Mountain Organics, who at that time had like 10 cycle plants that were in 10-gallon containers, and I was just like, this is unfucking believable. It that seemed just like a completely lofty, unattainable thing. I was so enthralled in where I was at with cycle one, and the process that, that's really, I didn't really look forward any further than that, and then every cycle, as I'm picking up information and learning, and I made little tweaks to how I, process the garden, and usually it led to me doing less, and I started it from a very minimalist perspective and approach, and I did that very intentionally. I think I just wanted to kind of prove the concept. Like I said, that picture of the plant that was grown with just water and shade leaves. And then look, I understand that there's nutrient in the soil, and that when you say something was grown with water only, some people are take exception to that. Like there's an attempt at being disingenuous, or and I just never really look. We all understand that there's nutrient value in the soil, but when I say when I used to say water only, I meant that I'm not mixing any nutrient in. I'm not, all that my root zone is getting is water from the time my plants hit the soil to the time I harvest them. That what's going through those blue mat drippers is fresh water. That's it. No teas, no fucking tonics, no mumbo jumbo, nothing. Just water. And I did that for a reason. And it was to illustrate that what was happening below the soil, between that interaction between the plant and the microbes at the rhizosphere, was driving everything, right? And that was my intention. That was my clear intention. And so it's been easy to not deviate from it, because the method has been very cut and dry, very simple. I will do a full year of kelp and aloe once a week in veg, and maybe the first 2 weeks of early flower. I do a JDAM wetting agent foliar as an IPM early in veg. But usually, like obviously once they're in flower, I don't do anything. And if I had to, like I had that little bit of aphid pressure on cycle 10, I got predatories. I got them on early enough that they were able to handle the problem. I think I had one little pocket where he had some ladybug larva, but it's my personal smoke and I don't give a fuck. If I got to pick a ladybug larva off a bud or two, it's not the end of the world. I'd much rather do that than deal with aphids or some kind of toxic spray or something. So, that being said, it's I'm still doing it that way. So if I'm applying biology to the beds at all, it's happening in between cycles. So, I've got a vermicompost station going in my place now. So it's been the winter months and I haven't been able to start a good biocomplete compost pile outside. Those take a while. So I'm just basically cold composting with organic compost that I've kind of store bought and then amended with kelp and oyster shell. And then that's what the worms are processing in my vermicomposting station. So I'm not using table scraps. Those are mostly water. You end up dealing with fruit flies and all that kind of shit. I've learned that lesson. So we're just sticking with the super cold vermicomposting. Those worms are awesome little bioreactors. They're literally consuming the microbes, concentrating them in their gut and shitting them out. It's like you can't get. It's awesome. It's a great source of biology and it's easy to have. It doesn't take up a very big footprint. And so I'll be utilizing that biology source to make sure that my biology levels in my beds are appropriate. And I'm doing that through direct microscopy, so utilizing the microscope to analyze and quantify and identify some of the soil food web, cohorts like the nematodes, whether they're bacterial feeding or root feeding, the good guys or bad guys. Those are skill sets that I didn't have cycle 1. I didn't have them cycle 9. So now I just have a clearer window to look through when analyzing my system. And it's been worth every penny to me to have that. It was not necessary to knock it out of the park beforehand. I was able to grow awesome without the scope, and you just trusting the system and trusting the process. There's no problem with doing it that way. I did it that way for 10 cycles and 9 cycles and did just fine. So this kind of like for a while there was some push pull against the microscopy and that it's unnecessary, and in a sense it is unnecessary, but it is a great tool, and it gives. And when I'm looking through like my compost extracts or whatever, it's nice to look in there and see that it has the protozoa, it has the things that I need, and I'm not questioning now when I put a compost extract in between cycles whether it's got the protozoa, it's got the nematode count that I need, I want. And now I can look at that and get that answer for myself, and it's a valuable data point.
So I can't help but wonder. I got a couple questions. About composting, and so one, I can't help but wonder. Yeah, I heard you mention aphids. Cannabis and aphids, which is a common problem there.
Yep.
Can you actually, with that in mind, when you're amending your soil, kind of amend it in twofold? You know what I mean? Both nutrient and with pest defense in mind. So can you add like say coffee grounds, which
sure.
Aphids don't like? I mean, could you aim with that being part of IPM, being part of that, mixing up coffee grounds and maybe eggshells?
Sure.
Are good for the soil as well, but I imagine as a management, they have to have some benefits as well. It seemed like pests wouldn't want to crawl through them either.
Yeah, I mean, those are all I think that the good thing about farming, or you know, even at any scale, even if no matter where you're at, with if you're cultivating, we'll just say cultivating is a more appropriate term. Farming just kind of gives this like grandiose kind of feeling, but when you're cultivating, um, so I don't want to disclude the guys that are doing little things, you know. When you're cultivating, you have every kind of right to try those things, you know. And I've never thought, I never thought about utilizing coffee grounds in that way. I will add them to of the vermicompost because that's a really good thing to add. Um, but I think that trying those type of things, and then just once again, like we talked about early on, like taking note, even if you're not writing the notes down, but you're taking a mental note, you're understanding what's happening, whether it's a net positive, a net neutral, or a negative, um, and then refining the process. There's always going to be a way you can tweak it. But what I've found from my studies and from my practical applications is that, there's been a lot of people way smarter than me that have spent way more hours um, thinking of these problems, and what they've come up with, are, at least what I've been able to understand, is that the biology plays such a huge role, and that the more biologically diverse and active and complete your soil is, um, the better chance you have at fending off those um, pathogenic and pests, because there's just no room for them. Like as soon as you get any kind of insect larva in a healthy soil, it's done for. You got nematodes that are going to get the really small larva. You got microarthropods that are get them at the later stage, the pupa stage or whatever it is. And so as long as you've got that a complete biology in adequate numbers, those things just don't stand a chance. And that's why my cycle 10 kind of lend itself as a testament to that, because I knew my biology numbers were low, because my beds have been fallow, and I just started to reintroduce the biology. I knew that a complete biology package was really going to happen once the plants started growing and their exudates were contributing to the whole process, because until that was happening, until the cover crop was actually going, the biology was pretty minimal in there. It was mainly bacteria. And so it took that 10th cycle for biology, for those big plants to be rocking and kicking in there, and all the cover crop doing their thing. And so now, just literally like 3 months later, I'm planting cycle 11, and things are just glorious. Like it's radiant in there, and not a hint of any kind of problem, which is super interesting. I was afraid, I had the aphids wiped out, but I was afraid there was going to be some kind of carryover. But once again, this high bricks, low bricks thing, and I know that the people take exception to it, but there's this absolutist mind frame that, I think that, and I've been guilty of it. I think I even have it on my highlights: 12 bricks or better, and bye press pressure. And what I mean by bye press pressure isn't like see you forever, but it greatly reduces, and that's a common observation amongst a lot of cultivators that I know who actually read their bricks. And now that's a slippery slope too, because you can get varying bricks readings from different times of the day. So the standard practice is to just pick a time of the day, because you're trying to get a data set, right? You're trying to find an arc, of where your plant is with their sugars, and more appropriately, the complex sugar, a complex carbohydrate. And so if you're taking it at different times of the day, then obviously you're going to have your data is going to be as valuable as that. You know, it's going to be very, very, very variable. But if you're taking it at the same time of the day, you at least have an idea of the stability or whatever. And for a while, I was taking them at lights on and then taking one at lights off and seeing the differences. And then, you know, usually there wasn't very much. I haven't noticed inside a difference at all. So I just take mine in the morning, within the first hour of lights on, and that's when I've decided to take my breaks. So, yeah, I went on a breaks tangent. Sorry.
So, with bricks, with that subject being said, I heard you talk about it being low. Do you address that with, say, compost that is in sugar rich? Yeah, I mean, do you
Well,
when
you know, it depends.
if bricks is important in your garden and you're building your compost, are you
Mhm.
building your compost with fruits and sugary based compost?
Sure, yeah, and that's a really common thought process, and I think um, my thinking on it, based on what I've learned, is that basically it's a biological imbalance that's lending to improper nutrient uptake, which is causing um, what should be complex carbohydrates instead being made into simple single chain carbohydrates, which don't register as healthy plant sugars when you do the bricks. So, yeah. Uh, Man, I'm really sorry. 2 joints into this. I usually don't smoke this much. Uh,
Oh man,
what was the
this is
question?
more serious than I would usually take this, Josh. To
Okay,
be
cool.
honest with you.
Cool. I feel kind of like a stoner right now, but it's
No.
I don't live and die by the bricks. Once again, it just like the microscope. It's just a data point. It's nice to see. Like, it's nice to have a number when my plants are really healthy and happy and active. It's nice to have a number, and a column to kind of associate that the state that plant is with this kind of number. Well, just like the scope, I was able to grow for years without a bricks meter. I would be able to grow just fine without it now, because we're just in tune with our plants and understand the processes a little greater and more as we go along. But I like having that data point, and I think that in order to increase, which is what the original question was in order to increase those bricks numbers, I would address the biology. So my cycle 10 bricks numbers were low, and that's because my bacteria populations were high. My fungal populations were not as high as I wanted them, but really what wasn't present was the protozoa, was the nematodes and the things that actually eat the bacteria and fungi that cycle the nutrients. Those weren't present in adequate numbers. So I had to buy nematodes and put them in after cycle 10. I did like a nematode infusion, and then the compost extract. And that's how I got my biology numbers back up, along with just cycle 10 and all the cover crop and companion plants and the cash crop itself, cycling its exudates into the soil and enriching the soil on its own for a 3-month period. So those just the act of the plants growing in it are what brings soils through those levels of succession, from a weedy prairie grassland to a weedy prairie thorn bush acreage. Then all of a sudden it's growing seasonal grasses, then it's growing more woody shit, and then 100 years later it's fungal dominated. You can those same type of things can happen in a very slow, very small scale in your room. When you have plants growing in there, it's enriching the soil, it's changing the chemistry, or what's available in the soil. And it's changing the structure and the texture, all of that. and it happens very fast. You know, it you think it's not, but you know, a 3-month time frame to me, that's fast. You know, to go from fallow concrete dry beds to 3 months later, you know, I was able to grow and pull off a crop in that 3 months too, you know. But after that 3-month period, we're like homeostasis again. The bed is just fucking kicking.
So I have a question from chat, and I'm going to ask you because I think it's a pretty good question, to be honest with you. The Major General 420 Army says, Kiss has no sand in it. Does Josh believe he has a soil or a modified peat?
Soil or a modified peat? Well, that's a good question. I mean, if, you know, I believe it had a compost component in it. I'd have to go back and see what that was. But even if, so at first it probably was a peat, and the system relied on the dry nutrient pack that was there and available, because that super soil blend, it's not super soil, that living soil blend did come, and he does recommend that you use a nutrient pack to kind of re-amend this soil. But the way I've treated it with adding composts and then these successive layers of cover crops and whatever, so there's a lot of organic matter in that bed. And so I think, you know, that I'm going to be moving forward with only using biology from this point, and that will be the testament to whether Dr. Elaine's soil food web works in these modified soil, you know, mixed soils that aren't kind of native soil. I didn't dig the dirt up, so is there a high concentration of sand, silt, and clay, which is what he's getting at? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know how to answer that. My guess is that it's obviously not going to have near as much of those things as a native soil would have. But organic matter has a lot of nutrient locked up in it as well. And so I think that if you have a lot of organic matter, there is a lot of pumice and biochar in that KISS blend. So, you know, I think I'm not worried moving forward with a biological approach. So I will not be amending my beds with dry minerals and nutrients for the foreseeable future. I plan on just adding the vermicompost. Whether I'm going to add the vermicompost like as a layer, like a top dress in between cycles, along with doing an extract and inserting the biology. That way I'm adding some organic matter to the beds as well, and not just biology. I think that's going to be the method that I'm taking. And I'm interested to see if yields are different over time, or if what I understand of the soil food web to be true is that as long as you have biology and you have you know, enough organic matter in your soil, in your parent material, then there's going to be enough NPK for any crop to grow. And I know that's a tough pill for some folks to swallow. It sounds like mumbo jumbo, but I'm here to try it, and I'm not afraid to try it. And I think that it's worth it, and it is a good question, and it's worth noting. Is there going to be a difference in these pre-mixed kind of living soil systems, or over an outdoor system where there's an abundance of sand, silt, and clay? Yeah, I may get to a point where I have to amend with glacial rock dust or something for the mineral content or something, and I'm fully accepting of that and prepared to do that if I needed to.
So aren't they, you know, and again, I'm completely new to the living organic systems, building your soil systems. But, you know, even if you were all in 100% peat, okay, flat out, you turn it into a living system, aren't by just adding the vermicompost, aren't you in fact adding, you know, basically, your rock dust and sand through the vermicompost?
I
You
would think
know,
so.
they
Yeah, I would think so. Like I'm not an expert on that by any means, and I'm just kind of dabbling in doing it myself. I've had small pass through vermicomposting things at various levels of success, but I've never sustained one and kept one that served an actual purpose that was important, and that's what this is to me now. So I'm just kind of going down this road. I wish like Clackamas Coot would be a really good resource. Like he knows his worm shit. Um, but I think that that's the value of the casting itself is what's being passed through. Because my understanding is that the worms really what they're eating is the bacteria off of the organic matter, that they're really not wanting to eat the organic matter, but sometimes it just makes it in. And that's what their shit ends up becoming. That casting is those little bits of organic matter that they incidentally consumed while hoovering up all the microbes off the outside of it, right? And that's what they're really eating is the biology. And then it all consolidates in their gut in this mucousy mass, and then it ejects that. Then they eject um, the fucking organic matter debris that it wasn't digesting because it was eating the bacteria and shit. So it stands to reason that that's why the earthworm castings has substance. It's there's something there. And so it stands to reason that if you've got like I feed my worms the diatomaceous earth, they're mowing through the compost. And so to me, it stands to reason there's going to be a lot of those things that are needed by the plant, those trace minerals, right there and we already know this that it's there and available in the earthworm casting. So like I said, I'm willing to see, and I'm looking forward to, because like I said, I've just learned this information about the soil food web and my understanding of how plants or how nutrient is pulled from soil and organic matter and those type of things. So I'm interested to see how that plays out in my beds at home. So fully prepared to have to amend them at some point, but I was under amending anyway to begin with, and my yields never changed. We did, yeah. So I'm interested to see how it goes moving forward.
What strains are you looking to put in some of them bags? What strains are you excited about currently?
Well, right now I'm testing a bunch. I'm testing some. Well, I'm running some Trilotto. A buddy of mine, a good friend of the family, he's been breeding for years. A legacy grower himself. He comes from a family of growers, and a brilliant breeder, man. And I've been trying to get him to go public with this Trilotto seeds. And I was even like, man, I'll turn my room into a seed. Let's just do seeds, man. Like this shit is incredible. Like I am such a picky bastard, and this Trilotto is damn near perfection for me. It's all gas, smells like burning bicycle tires. The parent genetics are Triangle Kush, a lemon skunk, and gelato. And he popped. He said he popped dozens and dozens of these Trilotto crosses of that three-way cross, and this one Trilotto was like a freak of nature. It came out completely different than everything else. It was the golden ticket style one, like none of the other ones had the same terp profile. They're all very different, and it was just this one kind of mutant. And so he was able to keep a hold of it. A year or so ago, before I shut the rooms down, my cycle 9 was the Trilotto, and that was his test batch of that shit. And it was hands down the best stuff I've ever grown, the best stuff I've ever smoked. And right now, 3 weeks into flower, and I can smell those terps, and I'm just every day I'm salivating. So the Trilotto is big on my list right now. That's gonna have a place in my garden for a long time. He has a cherry cookies cross with Trilotto that he says is better. I don't believe him. I don't know how it's possible, but he says it's better. I got a couple of those going, so we're gonna see what's up with those. I've got a couple of the Bay Area runts. I know it's a hypey, but he had them, and I was like, "Fuck it, let's try it. Let's see what the hype's about." It's kind of a fruity thing, and I'm not really into the fruity, so I don't know. That one might go to the wife and the oldest kid or something. But the and then I've got two testers, like a Dole Whip and Dilly Bar, and those are a couple of white truffles crosses going on right now. So I think I'm gonna be doing a lot of testing for my buddy because he's fucking pumping out the fire, and as long as I'm testing, he's got cuts. So it saves me from having to do any kind of cuts or any kind of secondary veg room, and I'll just happily run testers for him. And when he's ready to run seed of that Trilotto and go public, I think we could crush it, man. I would love to see this cut in other people's gardens, and I would love for them to experience. There's only like I could count the number of people who've been able to experience this true Trilotto, at least in my circle, on both hands, and it's a fucking shame because it's incredible.
So, a little off topic, but man, I can't help but notice you've got some pretty sweet ink over there, Chief.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I worked with a cat. His name is Jonathan Smith. So you guys look him up on IG, Johnny Smith Art. I might be Johnny Smith Tattoo. Um, Jonathan Smith, fuck. He's popular. He's got like 73,000 IG followers or whatever. And he's a really well-known tattoo guy now. But when he first moved from Alabama to Ashland, Oregon, where we were living at the time, we worked at the same place, and I was growing herb, of course, and I was able to trade him herb for sessions, and was able to get a full sleeve and half 50-60% of another one, and it was a great deal, and I got some neck work done too. But yeah, it was a good deal, man. And it was he was a great guy, and now his skills are absolutely unbelievable. These are like almost 20 years old now, maybe a little older.
Look great.
The
Fuck,
crazy
they
thought.
look great for 20 years,
Yeah,
man.
they're old, man. They've had them for a spell. But my hand ones are new. Those are new. But, but yeah, man, I got the tattoo itch. That's for sure.
Does it stop right there on your arms or what? You said you got some on
These
your
go up
neck.
to here. I've got two Colt handguns here, and then on my neck I've got some Colt pistols, and then yeah, I've got quite a few tattoos. I think when we figured it all out, it was something like 40 hours of work or something like that.
Nice, nice. Yeah, with that big old beard, I wouldn't have guessed. To
Yeah,
be honest with you, I wouldn't have
yeah, they're
guessed.
in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and there's like they go all the way back. They start here. You can see the handle there, and then they point back, and then the barrels are back kind of underneath my ear. But
right on.
that's a rare sighting, man. If you'd have to know me for quite a while, or be pretty close to me to see those, because I'll shave occasionally, but it grows back so fast. You don't you rarely get a chance to see the guns.
You're so you seem very laid back. The guns seem like I wouldn't have expected the guns, to be honest with you.
Well, man, I really picked up an affinity for them in the military, right? So, I did some special weapons courses, foreign weapons course, and so I really got good with the pistol and got good with just marksmanship and weapons handling in general. So, you know, I fucking love firearms, and I'm an owner of several, you know, and I think it's a lost art and a valuable skill. You know, it might not be necessary anymore these days, but maybe one day it will be. You know, and you know, it's just I think it's one of those lost arts that is really in danger. We're in danger of losing it. So I'm definitely going to be passing down the marksmanship traits and skills to my kids. You know, we already started with like very low feet per second BB gun, you know, marksmanship handling, that kind of shit. And as they get older, we'll move into you know, age appropriate increases in power, you know, but it all, the foundation being the weapons handling proficiency and all that. So you know, I think yeah, I love firearms. So yeah, it's one of those things that definitely throws folks off, but yeah, I kind of like it that way.
Yeah, you know, just a little just because I would have never seen that on you. Well, I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't have necessarily seen that coming by the demeanor.
Right.
And just another person I didn't see that in their demeanor as well. And I'm just kind of giving you this because it's good to know sometimes a common bond,
Yeah.
especially when there's another common bond that can be like a double useful edge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matthew Gates,
Oh,
the
no kidding.
IPM around
Yeah.
the is in big time into weapons.
Oh, that's
I
great.
was had him on, was talking, you know, IPM, and I'm like, what
Yeah.
else are you into? And we kind of went off into a side tangent, totally into weapons.
Oh,
I mean,
I
like,
bet he's brilliant with
just
those. I really like that
yeah,
kid, man. I like that kid a lot. You know, I, we've had a differing opinion, and I can't say that I have a differing opinion because our intelligence levels are so different. I mean, that guy is fucking brilliant. So it's for me to say that I have a differing opinion with him is that's a stretch, you know. Like I like John Kemp's idea. Once again, back to go to the bricks thing. I like John Kemp and Arden Anderson's idea that if you have a high enough bricks level, high enough proper carbohydrates in your plants, then you can eliminate pest pressure. I really like the sound of that, and you know, I I respect their the work that they've put in the industry. I don't think that they're hacks necessarily, right? So, what the information that I've been to a couple of Arden Anderson's talks personally in person, I've read a couple of the John Kemp's books and understand, you know, at a very rudimentary level his ideologies or whatever. And I know that Matthew had, you know, is like basically without saying no fucking way, saying no fucking way. It's like that's impossible. You know, it just doesn't work that way. And I'm not in a place to argue with him because he lays out very scientific, you know, points, and I respect and honor his level of you know, intelligence and credibility in that realm. So I'm, you know, I definitely, just because I like the idea of what John Kemp has to say doesn't mean I'm going to thumb my nose at this guy who's saying no, that's not right. You know, I think it's too easy for us to kind of take things personal, and I didn't take it personal at all. I actually appreciate his perspective, and anytime we've talked about it, it's been mutually respectful. I can't say enough really good things about the guy. I really value his input into the community at large, and just, you know, overall his overall demeanor and the way he carries himself. Very professional, really bright kid. I say kid because he looks young and I feel old. So that's the only reason why I'm calling him a kid. But I just think he's a brilliant guy, man. Right. And so yeah. Matthew, you're awesome, brother.
There's
And to know
no
he knows, and
fucking way.
the weapons is great, man. I bet he's just like knows his shit.
There's no way you should feel old. 46, if I remember hearing right,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not old. It's not old, my friend. Not even close.
No, you're right.
I'm actually, I have years on you. I have years on you.
That's
I'm
crazy.
49. I'm 49.
Oh wow,
So
you're looking good, man. You don't
there,
look like it though.
thanks.
Mhm.
But there's no way at all I am gonna tell myself at any point I'm old. I keep telling myself,
I need to do that because I feel old sometimes and I'm just like, oh my god. But it is a mantra, and if you say it too much, you know, you will become it.
true.
Well, man, I should
So,
probably bounce, man. I would, I think it's I'm getting to my 2 hour point.
oh man, you've been more than gracious with
Awesome.
your time. I
I
can't thank
appreciate it.
you enough for coming on doing this. This is your second appearance on the channel, so I have no bitches at all, man. You have donated a ton of time already to what goes on in this community, and if I let you off on a good note, maybe you'll donate some more time
Oh, definitely.
sometime in the future.
Yeah,
So
definitely,
I
man. It
would
was a
rather
pleasure.
stay on that good foot. There is a couple of things that, well, one of them you should know by now. This Zoom number is always the same. If
Okay.
there's ever a wormhole on and you feel like popping on and schooling us, or just popping on and hanging out and burning a
Yeah.
joint with
Yeah,
us
absolutely.
and making us feel cool that we've got an excellent guest with us, that'd be awesome.
I appreciate
The,
that, man. I really do.
the other thing I'd like to get from you before you go is just the soundbite that I like to get from the rest of my guests. I think you know what that's about. Uh, Basically, what I'm looking to get from you is, hey, this is Joshua Steensland, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 339. You can add whatever you want to it. You can
Yeah.
cut it off there,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Okay. Hey,
I'm
this is
ready
Joshua.
whenever you are.
All right, cool. Hey, this is
I'm
Joshua
sorry.
Steensland. This is Joshua Steensland, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with the Eagle, episode 339.
Yes,
339.
sir.
Fucking A.
Thank you very much,
Man,
man. You're
my pleasure.
awesome guy, awesome, full of knowledge. You've done huge things in this community.
Nah, man.
Thank you very
I
much.
appreciate that. Thanks a lot, and I love what you got going on, man. And looking forward to coming back.
Please do. Please
All right,
do.
man.
Have a
All right.
great night.
You too. Later, guys.
Bye now. Another great episode right there. Hopefully you are following that great gentleman. That's silly. I know you're following Josh. You should be. Well, that puts another one in the can. Episode 339 in the hole. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode. I know I did. Been fun hanging out with Josh. So might as well wind her up. You guys know the routine. Look for me in the wormhole here in a few. What time we got? It's 1:30. Let's check in back at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, we'll fire up the wormhole. 2 o'clock Eastern time. Please look for that notification or just check back at 2 o'clock for the wormhole. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. You guys know the deal. Please do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do save lives. I'm a living, breathing example of that. Fill up that tray. Use the restroom. I'll be back. I am out of here, guys. I'll